Good evening. Good evening. I think we should just remove the.
I just changed the input to it.
Loud voice. So the format is I'll share a few words, and then Rabbi Markowitz will share a few words. Afterwards, we'll open it up for questions. A couple of years ago, I received a call from an author. His name is Rabbi Moshe Gans, and he wrote a couple of books called Make Me, Don't Break Me. And he said he had heard a story about me, and he was just checking to see if it was true before he used the story in the book. I said, let me hear the story. What's the story? So the story went like this. I was talking to a student in my office, and the secretary knocked on the door and said that there's someone very important outside. To which, as the story went, I responded, I'm speaking to someone very important right now, and whoever that is will have to wait. And the young child heard that he was considered important in my eyes, and he lived happily ever after. So I told Rabbi Gans, who I'd never met before, I'd never spoken to, I said, it's a nice story. It definitely didn't happen with me. It could have happened with my parents, for their entire life, but it didn't happen with me. But he actually got me thinking. And it actually started me off on this whole idea, quite a few years ago, the story, of building a yachas with the children, with the students, so that they appreciate and recognize that they are the most important people in our eyes, thereby, hopefully, affecting them in a very positive way. So tonight, I would like to share with you some ideas. I'll share them with you quickly. Each one of these ideas needs elaboration, but for the sake of time, and because there are three presenters and we want to leave time for questions, I'll present them just the point, the idea, the source for it, and then this 10 l'chacham v'yech gamoid at another time we can elaborate, or you can talk about it and think about it on your own. So the first thing I'd like to mention is that the title for my few words was actually talking and listening to our children. The subtitle was building bridges between parents and children to help them grow in Yiras Shamayim and Midas Tovos. But I actually changed the order as I was thinking about tonight's few words. I changed the order of the verbs in the title. Instead of talking and listening, I switched and put listening before talking, based upon the following Hayom Yom, which of course was always important. It's Torah, it's the words of the Rabbeim, the words of Chazal, but even more so in today's day and age. The pasuk in Mishlei says, "Dai gibelev ish yashchena." That's the word yashchena. Push it away. If you have something bothering you, push it away. The Gemara brings two interpretations. One is to play on the words. Instead of yashchena, yasichena midaitoi. If something's bothering you, just remove it from your mind. It's the first interpretation of the Gemara. The second interpretation is if something's on your mind, something's bothering you, yasichena lacherim. Share it with someone else. Talk to someone else about the issue that you're struggling with. Upirish hatzemach tzedek. This is what the tzemach tzedek contributes and adds to those two opinions of the Gemara. He says, lacherim rak beguf. If person A has an issue, and person B is going to be effective in helping person A overcome that challenge, Yasichen al-acher, talk to somebody else. It has to be that he's acherim rak beguf. The other person is just a different body, somebody different than him, a different human being. Listen to these words of the Tzemach Tzedek. Avol meuchadim itoy imoy. The listener who's helping the person overcome some of their problems has to be so connected and one with the person, shemagishin esinyane, he has to be able to feel the other person. So what the Tzemach Tzedek is telling us based on the Gemara is that we have to listen very carefully, and whoever's talking to us, a child, approaches us with an issue, with a problem, we have to listen, and we have to listen carefully. I said it's challenging, it's part of Torah, so it was always appropriate and true and holy. But how much more so today in the age of technology that we've forgotten how to listen. We've lost the skill of total focus on the person who's sitting or standing in front of us, to listen carefully to what they have to say, to process it. And just to share with you that even the presence of a cell phone that is shut off on your desk leads to impairment in attention and a perception on the part of the person you're speaking with that the conversation is less meaningful and the interaction is marked by less empathy than when there's no evidence of a cell phone during a conversation. So not only do we have to turn off our cell phones, we actually have to get rid of them and put them somewhere else when we're functioning in the capacity of that acherim rak begufay but zmeuchad itoy. To quote, to read from the Rebbe, an answer, b'chdei lahashpia al mishu, it's hard for you to read, so I'll read it, but I want to read the words exactly from the Rebbe. B'chdei lahashpia al mishu, if you want to have hashpa on someone, if you want to influence someone, specifically hanoyar b'tkufaseinu, the young, the youth in our times, he says you have to speak, but you have to give it over, uba oifen, shazokuk lahashpa yargish atzmai chofshi lihisvakeach v'lanos. We have to be there for them, open ourselves up to hear what they have to say. And if they want to disagree or they want to share their thoughts, so we have to be good listeners. And therefore I put the word listening before speaking. But now let's move on to talking to our children in order to build the bridges to help them grow in Yiras Shamayim and Midas Tovos. I want to share 4 points, but with the following introduction. There's a saying in the world of education, you can mandate transactional matters, but you cannot mandate transformational matters. What that means for a parent would be like, you can mandate that your child goes to sleep on time, maybe. That's transactional. You can mandate that your child brushes their teeth. That's transactional. But you can't mandate that your child have Yiras Shamayim or have good midos. That's transformational. You can't mandate that. You can't sit there and say to them, you need to become, you have to have more Ahavas Yisrael. You have to daven better. You must. You need to. You can say it ad nauseum. You can't force that. To read the words of the Rebbe, Nesinas HaTorah, Hoysal T'nai, Shechelek Achi Gadol M'maaseh Adam Yaseh B'Bechirasai. Ultimately, transformational things come from the Bechira, the choice of the person. K'ma shenemar B'charta B'chaim, V'loi al Yedei Pekudois U'Gzeres. You don't force people to do things. If that was ever true, how much more so in today's day and age. You don't force people to change the whole way that they exist and they think and they believe. So how do you go about changing people? So I want to talk about the right time, the right manner, and a couple other suggestions to consider. The first idea is and Rabbi Seebeck touched on this, but just to mention another 2 words on the topic. There's a sikha where the Rebbe once told a story that the Alter Rebbe, who was in charge of the Tzemach Tzedek's Chinuch, Tzemach Tzedek approached the Alter Rebbe, they began learning by Yikra, and he asked him, why is there a small aleph? And the Alter Rebbe, it says, was Fatveket. He thought deeply for a few minutes, and then he explained to his son the idea of humility. He contrasted the small aleph in Vayikra to the big aleph in Divrei Hayamim when the pasuk speaks about Adam Rishon. And the question is, why did the Alter Rebbe have to think deeply before he responded to the question that the Tzemach Tzedek posed to him? It's an obvious answer. The Tzemach Rebbe knew all the commentaries. What was he fadveket about? And here's what the Rebbe says. In Ha'ara there, the Rebbe explains, and this is my understanding, just to paraphrase the Rebbe's point. We mostly select the wrong time to be mechanech. As Rabbi Seebeck said, the situation arises and we're very reactive. And that's the wrong time. The Alter Rebbe sensed that the Tzemach Tzedek was asking a question. Why is there a little aleph? He could have answered him simply, all the various interpretations of the commentaries. But he knew that was a teaching moment. It was an opportune time to share with the Tzemach Tzedek something fundamental that was going to be helpful for him for the rest of his life. So he thought deeply, how can I respond in a way that will be transformational for my grandson? So this morning, as an example, I had the opportunity to teach the 5th and 6th grade at Lubavticher Yeshiva in Parkway. And the topic was davening. How many fathers and mothers tell their children, we must daven, you have to daven, you have to daven, you have to daven, sit down, daven. Then we get upset with them. We don't understand why they don't want to daven. So that's not a helpful way. Lectures are not helpful. And telling them how when you were younger you davened so excellently, that also is not generally helpful. First of all, it's most likely not true. Even if it is true, it's not helpful. So, I showed him a beautiful picture of Zalman Kleiman. And I asked him 2 questions. I said, first, describe the picture in detail. How many people on this picture? What are they doing? What day of the week is it? What are they thinking? And the next thing is, I said, what does the artist want to communicate with this drawing? You can't see it, but the clock says 1:30. You can see them are davening. And the children in the 5th and 6th grade, Lubavitcher Yeshiva in Ocean Parkway, came up with the most brilliant answers. And a conversation ensued about what is davening and why do we daven. And we segued into things to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for. We have to, as parents, plan, whether it's a Shabbos meal, whether it's discussion, engage them in conversations. You have to prepare for something if you want it to be meaningful and transactional. So choosing the right time is point number 1. Point number 2, share with you a story, which I heard from Rabbi Osher Farkash, who's a mashpia in Argentina. He said he was once asked by Rabbi Yaakov Hecht, to work with some teenage boys who had unfortunately gotten involved with a cult. They came from a religious home, from a modern home. And he asked them to go for a break for them, talk to them. So Rabbi Farkash asked, what should I talk to them about? What's the topic? What's the subject? So he said he actually asked the Rebbe that question. And the Rebbe said the following thing. Du sollst reden, und du sollst reden, und du sollst reden. You should speak, you should speak, you should speak. Until the time it will be dvarim hayoytzim min halev. The things which you say will come from the depth of your heart. And once they come from the depth of your heart, it's b'derech hamela, it's going to affect the other person. From which Rabbi Farkash understood, very obviously, that it's less important what we say. It's more important that what we're saying is meaningful to us and it's real. I once asked Dr. Twersky, a famous psychiatrist and author, I said to him, a parent asked me a question. The child comes home and one evening they find them looking on the internet at inappropriate material. What should the parent do? So Rabbi Twersky said, you should vomit. That was his answer. He says there's nothing more meaningful you could do to the child than show him how disgusted you are, for just naturally. In other words, dvarim hayotzim min halev is nichnosim halev u'poel pulosim. That's the b'shas b'zet ha'yidish kid. Was das im art nit was the Eibusher beweist nit zem. If you meet a Jewish child, the Rebbe writes, who's not bothered that the Eibusher didn't appear, is nit weil nit shaykh to them. It's not because the child is not connected to such a concept. It's not a keli for that. This is because we, the adults, are not necessarily sharing words that come from the heart. So the right location, the right time, and dvarim hayotzim min halev. And then, of course, the good old one, being a dugma chaya, the famous story with the Kutzker. Someone came to the Kutzker and he says, I beg my children to learn Torah, and they don't want to learn Torah. So the Kutzker said to him, what about you? Do you learn Torah? He says, Rebbe. He says, I don't have time. I can't learn Torah. So the Kutzker says, if you don't learn Torah, they don't see you learn Torah, they're not going to learn Torah. So he says, Rebbe, you mean to say all these years I'm nudging my children to learn, that was all for a waste? He says, no, it wasn't for waste. They'll one day have children also, and they'll tell their children to learn. You have to model anything that you want the children to see. They did a study here. The most generous children were those who watched the teacher give but not say anything. There was a teacher who decided to give charity in front of his students every single day. He didn't say one word about charity. Just gave charity. This is for charity, this is for charity, this is for charity. And they compared that to someone who spoke about the need to give charity and gave charity. The speaking hurt it. 2 months later, those children were 31% more generous than those who observed the same behavior but also heard it preached. The preaching hurt it. It didn't help it. But being a dugma chaya for these things is what's ultimately important. And finally, I'm going to conclude with a personal story and another point. Who greater than the Rebbe believed in the Chassidim and believed in the children, believed in each and every one of us? I remember we had this tremendous chus to have yechidus with the Rebbe before I went on shlichus to South Africa. I was almost 18 years old at the time, and we had a yechidus in Gan Eden HaTachton. And like I like to tell it, my grandfather, Olav Shalom, Reb Nachum Volz, was a Chassidish Shiit. He used to call us the Americana chocolatnikus, the American chocolate ice cream eaters. He didn't like ice cream and candy the whole time. So that we were American kids, and that was that. But here we are with the Rebbe in Gan Eden HaTachton. 10 Bachrim, 17-year-old, 18-year-old Americana chocolatnikus. And the Rebbe says like this. It was Chav Vav Teves. There was a Kabring in that Shabbos. He says, Hinchem chayolei beis David amitim. Here's what the Rebbe talking to us. You are the true chayolei beis David. The gamneres lahar. Lahavi, it's upon you to bring us kol ha'oirish shekol ha'rabbeim. We're charged with the mission of bringing down all the energies from all the Rabbeim. B'fratsha balilul, the chavdal teves, balilul, dasir b'shar, b'poyel, l'matim asar tzvachim. The Rebbe saw a group of 17, 18-year-old boys, who were whatever we were, and he charged us, he believed in us, he expected us to achieve greatness. So, communicating to our children that even if they made a mistake, even if they were sent out of class, they had an issue, they bothered their sibling, they were disrespectful, if we believe in them, and we communicate to them that tomorrow is another day, and you have the capacity to be great, like the famous story with in the Russian army, the officer who had a tremendous soldier, Grisha. One problem was he drank too much. So this officer said to him, Grisha, he says, if you would only stop drinking, you could become like me, a colonel. So Grisha says, what are you talking about? When I drink, I'm a general. All our children without drinking, they shouldn't drink. can become generals. We have to communicate to them that we believe in them and we expect them to do so. The Eibusher should help. We should all have nachas from our children. And partnering with the yeshivas that our children are in, Lubavticher Yeshiva, wherever your children are in, the day should come when we should bring our children to the Rebbe, Gidulim Shagidalnu, or these are the children that will stand in the front to greet Mashiach B'Meher B'Yameinu.